with that, Gruff?
Yeah, relatively. I think we've got to be. When you perhaps look at, obviously reviewed last year where there was games that slipped away from us in terms of pushing our advantage home, but we were quite clinical in terms of turning pressure into points at key times and obviously put the game to bed fairly early. However, we felt there was probably a little bit of an untidiness about us with a high turnover rate in the first half, and even defensively, even though tactically the game seemed pretty comfortable for us, we did have a couple of poor moments defensively. Their try and one or two other little half breaks which Edinburgh carved out, certainly against what's normally a watertight defence.
Gruff, are you pleased with your Lions?
Yeah, they've been great for us in terms of the environment. Obviously the three of them have been involved in the first two games and played key parts there in terms of pushing us onwards, but also obviously Alan Wynne and Tips coming back to the group in terms of the matchday squad this week. Does make a difference, and especially physically we're able to impose ourselves, and we did that for large chunks of today's game, and we had to, because fair play to Edinburgh, there was a big physicality about them also. They've obviously got a strong mindset there around the new coaching group, so we had to man up, and the Lions were to the fore there.
What do you make of Hibbard?
Yeah, he's growing and growing all the time as a player. He's as reckless as ever in terms of throwing himself around. But it does create a good mentality around the team that we want a bit of edge about things we do. And he certainly gives us that, as well as some strong set-piece play. And he's obviously crowing about the tries he scored as well, just to put a bit of gloss on his night, I suppose.
Did you agree with the yellow card,
Gruff? We do have a quick snapshot of it, and I think it's probably a little bit too grey in terms of whether it was letter of the law. I think there was a bit of control to the tackle, but it's by the by now. I think it's the process was an okay one there. It didn't take too much time, albeit I felt there was other times in the game where it just did feel a little bit truncated, a little bit, the TMO work.
Do you think that actually did you a favour because it seemed to galvanise you into action?
Yeah, there's perhaps a fair bit to be said for an old-fashioned all-in, because certainly we were obviously some strong messages going on that we were potentially vulnerable because they'd scored. We're down to 14. We're putting ourselves back on the back foot. But it did. Suddenly there was a bit of mentality about the group about, right, let's dig in, let's do what we've got to do, get into the right areas and squeeze them. And then certainly a couple of our set-piece calls from when we were down to 14 were really smart, and we were able to really just push our ascendancy there despite the man down.
You must be pleased as well. Bonus points you were shorter than last season. Pick one up there quite nicely.
Yeah, definitely. We reflected on 6 games last year where we only put 3 tries away, and some of them were early on in games as well, in terms of the sort of 45, 50-minute mark. Today we've got to 22 and been clinical, in most of the stuff we've done in that area of the game. So it is a mentality for us, and certainly we want to make the Liberty a fortress. We haven't lost here for probably a year or so, I guess. So we've got to just keep on pushing this form now, because again, it'll mean nothing if we slip to a defeat next week on our travels. We've got to back up a good start with a strong start, and the next 2 weeks gives us a chance to back it up.
You've made it a good start, which is in contrast to last year. What do you think is different this time that you've kind of really hit the ground running this time?
We were probably a little bit more elitist in terms of putting players on the park for the Worcester and Bath games. Last year we played Clermont early August, and we pretty much put a squad side together, and they were just on the cusp of T14, so that stretched us a bit. And then the Bath game out in the Liberty, we probably chopped and changed in our last prep before the Treviso game last year. This year we probably wanted to put key combinations in early, and the two pre-season games were real good physical workouts for us also. So we were able to bring probably 13, 14 forwards up to speed early on in our preparations, and obviously we've used that as ammunition for the Treviso game first and foremost, and then picking up some momentum thereafter.
Gruff, are you expecting Eli Walker to be in the Wales squad next month?
I always say he's got to earn it. I thought, we went through the Treviso game where, even allowing for the fact he'd been a long time away from rugby, I felt, there was perhaps too much of a tenderness about him. He got more involved in the game last week, which is positive signs, and he's done a lot of good today. He's looking for some work off the ball, but also finishing and looking sharp in everything he's doing. So if he keeps that consistency, and as last year, if he can light up Europe, I think he'd be certainly close to that squad.
What about Richard Fussell? He's sort of feel like the doesn't get a lot of credit really for what he does, but I think hand in, quite apart from obviously Hibbard's tries, but he seemed to have a lot to do with everything else that was going on there.
Yeah, by and large, I think Fuss has been, tactically great for us. Sometimes it appears ugly, but he knows exactly where and how we want to play the game. And he's also a massive influence on the wingers. He's been a big part of Eli's development over the last 12 months, and Hanno prior to that, just with his understanding of the back three role. He's also got a help in that process with people like Jeff and Asaya coming into the group as well. But apart from that, obviously his own individual quality is there. He's still probably turning the ball over a bit too much for my liking, and is still perhaps a bit hesitant in the wide channels. But we get more good than the bad from Richard, and he's generally Mr. Consistent. And I think the more we go through the season, we'll just keep that sort of working platform for us to go forward.
Tom Smith?
Don't know. We've just seen the doctor there. It could go one of two ways.
Was it knee or something?
Yeah, it was a knee. And potentially it's blown out there, which will be a fair chunk of it. You could get lucky in that it just might displace and just work itself back in, but you're still talking probably a few weeks. That's the best case, but obviously the worst case is back to a long period of rehab for Tom, which is a shame because he's had a year of it, and he's been fantastic as a leader in the group over the summer. Talk about the Lions, but he's a player who seizes hold of the group, and his performances as well in the first 3 games have been rock solid in a good back five for us.
When you say his knee's blown, you mean his dislocated or something?
Potentially, yeah. It's just moved off centre, and since then we don't know whether it was going to hospital, whether they've been able to put back in.
Did that take his mind off the forearm to the face?
Yeah, there was a little bit of that perhaps going on, and that's the mindset around one or two of their players. Perhaps the game is going against them, and they want to perhaps bring a different edge to proceedings, but that's their prerogative, and we responded just by playing rugby, I guess, and that's crucial for us in key pressure times.
Gruff, did you engage top gear there, or is there even more to come from you?
I'd certainly hope there's more. As I said, half-time we were really frustrated because even though we had about 66% territory, on the lion's share of possession in, like I said, the right area of the game, there were still 11 turnovers come half-time. So that wasn't good enough in terms of really consolidating pressure for longer periods. Instead, that a lot of our set-piece game was good. There were some different options taken and different variation we haven't seen before. But we do strive for more, and I think there was a couple of times we were still a bit static and didn't perhaps stretch them as much as we could as well.
Matthew Morgan's try.
Yeah, it was classic Matthew, and I'm pleased. Something like Ashley Beck is looking for the shift. He wants to play from that area to either have a crack or to put the ball on his kicking terms. But it gives Matthew the opportunity then to actually have a look, drop his shoulder, and exploit that 1v1. And we know that good is in Matthew's game. But also we were pleased, even though the game had fragmented with the amount of subs the last 20, we were conscious we wanted to keep a tactical hold of the game, so we didn't probably overplay. We still wanted Tito to kick and turn some pressure onto the Edinburgh back three, and that was part of the learning process for players off the bench.
Gruff, Ryan Jones, when are you expecting him to be available?
He will be available this week. I know I intimated as such the week just gone, but physios are quite cautious there, but nothing to really hold him back. But again, it's just a case of looking at the fatigue of the group. We wanted to give people like Bierman and King a rest this week, but we've still got strength with people like Tyler. Justin Tipprick obviously came into the mix. So it's just about rotating the squad needs at the moment, and Ryan will hopefully be someone who is desperate to play and will want to make an impact against Connacht, because obviously now we've rotated to a certain degree, but we want to try and get to a certain point where players now have got a fighting chance for that shirt for Europe.
Nice one.
Yeah,
Thanks, boys. Good stuff.